I just want to welcome everybody today to disaster preparedness. I think just this last week in the Bay Area, the couple of earthquakes that we had, which were 3.2 on the Richter scale, gave us some early warning of how important it is to prepare for ourselves, our immediate family, our loved ones, our neighborhood, our community to prepare for this. And we now find out at this kind of event how local fire, local police, local hospitals and schools and senior facilities and even our pet facilities work in unison with the surrounding communities to prepare people for the next disaster. It's not if, it's when. In the last 100 years, we've had almost 4 major disasters, 2 major earthquakes, and 2 major fires right here in the East Bay and the Oakland-Berkeley area. And so it just lets us know that we have to get prepared as individuals and a community for the next big disaster. So thank you for being with us. I'm so fortunate, and we in Alameda County are very blessed to have incredible public servants who love their job. And I say that in a way in which, while we as citizens may complain on a regular basis, people who go into public service really do it because they love serving individuals. I have the good privilege of seeing him in closed session, seeing him out in his facilities, see him in the community, which he's often in a community like today, and know that at the fundamental core of his being is being a public servant. New person maybe to many of you, because the sheriff who has individuals who serve us by way of the Port of Oakland, by way of some of our public transit services, also has a fundamental purpose for being over Santa Rita, North County Jail, and also serving the people in the unincorporated area, just like the Berkeley Police serve here in this area. I want to say thank you, a special thank you to Greg Ahern, the Sheriff of Alameda County, for being here today, especially after the last several weeks preparing for Urban Shield, which took place all last weekend. I know he has to be exhausted from that. And say thank you very much for taking time to be with us today.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that nice introduction. Good morning, everybody. First of all, thanks to King Elementary School for having us here and hosting this very important event. So what a nice facility. I'd like to say how appropriate it was that we're here today following the earthquakes that Supervisor Carson ordered over the weekend to make sure the auditorium was full. So what I'd like to do today is tell you a little bit about what's occurred in the past, what we're doing currently to manage these types of events, and what we do in the future so that everybody in the county, and specifically everyone in this room, is aware of what needs to be done. So our county's been in existence since 1853, and obviously since that time we've had a number of major disasters. The 2 most frequently mentioned that you heard about through both Nancy and Keith was the firestorm and the Loma Prieta earthquake. Those events occurred in 1989, the Loma Prieta, and 91 was the firestorm. And each time we have those things, they're managed through our Office of Homeland Security and Emergency Services, which is located out in the Dublin area. But we learn from all those events. We learn that there's gaps that needs to be addressed, people need to be trained, community needs to be made aware, and we continue to work on those gaps and narrow those gaps so we are more successful in each and every one of those events. So, as you are aware, the state of California has 58 counties, and out of those 58 counties, there's regions that are divided up throughout the state of California. And I happen to be the elected official for the Sheriff's Office that's responsible for Region 2. Region 2 consists of 16 counties as far south as Monterey and extends up to the Oregon border, and it's the counties to the western part of the state. And Region 2 is responding to any type of emergency in that area. And that area in Region 2 is broken down into smaller components so that we can respond and manage those type of disasters at a more local level. So for you to be aware, both local, state, county, federal, all have a system in place to respond to any type of disaster or terrorist attack in our area. So out of those 16 counties, that includes 151 incorporated cities and about 8 million people. Whenever we have an event in Alameda County, we run that through mutual aid, and the mutual aid is run through a unified command. So Supervisor Carson mentioned that I am the Region 2 coordinator, but that doesn't mean I'm going to be managing and directing the fire chief on how to deal with his response to a fire. We run a unified command. If there is a fire, the fire component is managed through the agency that has that training and that specific discipline. If it's a law enforcement component, then I would be managing and making the decisions on what takes place. And what happens in a mutual aid event is the local component, once they reach and expand outside of their capabilities and what components and equipment they need, they would call for help, and we set up a command system that Lieutenant Mike Toms would manage out of our Office of Homeland Security. And what they manage are things like potential disaster and threats, obviously earthquake and fires, flooding, even things like pandemic flus or tsunamis that we've had, terrorism attacks, or any type of chemical hazards. And law enforcement mutual aid that we provide would obtain people, equipment, and resources for our entire region. So many times we have floods that come out of just west of the Sacramento area, and we respond to that area and provide them equipment and tools. One of the most recent things we responded to is the mass murder that was up in Mendocino County. And we responded by providing them tactical teams and law enforcement units that were specific to that type of need. So we went up with law enforcement canines, we went up with bloodhounds, we had trackers, and we had specific equipment that we provided to that region, like infrared sights and listening devices, vehicles, ballistic equipment, things of that nature. We also do a lot of training in our area, and I'll talk about Urban Shield in just a few minutes, but we do tabletop exercises as well to make sure that all of our command staff and management team and staff members are prepared and ready to respond. One of the major ones that goes on is Golden Guardian. I'm sure a lot of you in the audience have been a big part of that, and our cards people are a major player in that way as well. The way that citizens should prepare, what we recommend, is that you have a plan in place for you as an individual, for you as your family, and maybe even include your neighbors. That you prepare for water and food for at least 3 to 4 days so that you can take care of yourself and not be another reason that first responders have to go and respond to you for basic needs. So if you can take care of your basic needs for 3 to 4 days, that's a great help to the first responders. We also suggest that you know how to contact the organizations in your area that are a big part in responding to any type of disaster that we have. And the first person or group that you want to be aware of is Red Cross. And they're in the house tonight, so when people from Red Cross, raise your hand so they know that you're here. All right, thank you over here to the left and in the back. So they respond throughout the nation, throughout the world. So make sure that you know how to get a hold of them. 211 has been a big part in Alameda County and providing resources to everyone in our region. There's city and county social services that are a big help. And what you can do to take care of yourself is join certain volunteer groups or be prepared for disaster so you have first-hand training. Things like our search and rescue teams, or a member of reserves, or be a part of the Berkeley teams that are out here for their civilian part that they have with their law enforcement entities. There are civilian corps that you can belong to, and of course, Red Cross is always looking for more volunteers. Since 2007, so for the last 5 years, Alameda County Sheriff's Office has hosted a program that I created called Urban Shield. And what Urban Shield is a training for first responders so that we can work in our different disciplines and understand the capabilities and the limitations of each different unit. The reason we put this together is you can think back to the Columbine High School shooting, where you had a form of domestic terrorism where the students went in and began to shoot and kill the innocent students that were attending school, setting off explosives and armed themselves with automatic weapons and semi-automatic handguns. And if you remember, the first responders were there, and the fire and the police weren't communicating very well on how to get these people rescued. And law enforcement did not know what the capabilities or limitations of the fire teams were. Hey, we don't go into hot zones where they're firing. And law enforcement was wondering where the EMT was. Why don't they come up? So because we saw that there was a severe need for training on how we can work together. So what we put on are different venues throughout 4 Bay Area counties that incorporate the entire Bay Area. And we respond to critical infrastructure sites that have already been identified as potential terrorist targets. Things like the Caldecott Tunnel, the University of Berkeley, the Chevron Refinery, the Bay Bridge, the Oakland International Airport, the Lawrence Livermore Lab, are things that on our side of the bay. We've done scenarios at the San Francisco Airport, Cal State East Bay. We've gone to anything that we thought had been identified as a potential terrorist target and trained in that actual venue. So fire, police, EMTs, all knew how to get to the site, all knew where to go, had some direct knowledge of the different entities or specific issues that would be addressed at the Caldecott Tunnel, how far the tunnels go, how you make entry into the auxiliary tunnels, things of that nature, just basic things that you would want your first responders to be aware of. And then we go over the gaps, and how we, what type of equipment would we need? How would that equipment be best utilized? Who has that equipment? How long would it take to get that equipment to the site? If we wanted to set up a regional mobile command vehicle, where would we put it? Who has those type of vehicles? If we needed a ballistic vehicle for some type of terrorist response, who has that? How do we get it? Does the keys work? Are there drivers there? What type of weaponry should we have? Who has that weaponry? The fire teams, how do we communicate with the fire teams? How do we use their radio system in an interoperable type of communication so we can respond appropriately? When do we call in the EMTs? How do they respond? What do they need? If we say leave because there's shots being fired and they're tending to a patient, what do we do with that patient that they're tending to? So all of these type of issues and problems are addressed in real-life scenarios that we make as realistic as possible by bringing in Hollywood artists, we bring in amputees, we bring in people with severe handicaps, we bring in many volunteers to assist us. So we know how to respond to those events. But behind those events, behind those scenarios, we run everything as if it were a disaster drill. And we respond everything through a departmental operations center, and we divide that responsibility up to branch commands, and those branch commands have specific responsibilities in dealing with safety, response, logistics, and planning, and personnel. And as Supervisor Carson mentioned, we then have to prepare for the recovery. And we then demobilize, have to recover all that equipment, bring back everything that was brought in, have everything returned to its proper place, make sure it's tested and ready to go out for a real disaster. So that's what we do currently, and what we're going to do in the future is expand on those types of scenarios. We're going to study the gaps and the problems that we learned through Urban Shield. We're going to identify what needs to be purchased, We're going to identify where our weaknesses are and improve on them. So with that, I'll make myself available for questions later on during the program. I hope you are prepared, and I know that we as a community are probably the best prepared in the nation for any type of disaster that would occur for our first responders. So thanks for listening.